Hello and welcome to the 206 Podcast. I am your host, Mark Morin, coming to you from Seattle, Washington, and providing virtual coverage of the 2021 Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival. Today, I'm speaking with filmmaker Patricio Ginelsa, whose movie Lumpia with a Vengeance has been playing at film festivals across the country this year. Patricio, welcome to the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to meet you, Mark.
Yeah, nice to meet you as well. Thank you for taking the time. Now, first, let's talk about the story of this movie. Now, Lumpia Man is a very unique and very Filipino take on a comic book superhero type character. So give me a quick breakdown of the story and where did the idea first come from for this character?
So Lumpia with a Vengeance is actually about Lumpia Man who teams up with a high school student, Rachel, to take down a crime syndicate who is selling drugs masked as food, in this case, lumpia, the popular Filipino spring roll.
Right.
And then the idea of this wacky comic, because the superhero fights crime using lumpia, so it's a really out there kind of idea. And the idea actually came about, and this is a sequel to, we call it the ultimate homemade movie I did with Lumpia 1. And the idea really came about because we were fans of a movie called El Mariachi, by Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Myself and my brother Dar, and we watched that. We were saying, okay, so here's a Mexican hero who uses a guitar as a weapon. What would be the Filipino version of this? And as a joke, my brother just said, "Oh, what about a guy who dressed up as in a Barong Tagalog and throws lumpia around?" And he was just joking. I said, "Wait a minute, there's something visual and something interesting about that idea, And so only in the comic book world, I felt that we could have made this story possible.
Right.
We already have heroes that uses bats and spiders as an icon. So why not your favorite food, right? So
especially something deep fried. I mean, what more could you want, right?
And that was the only thing we could think of that would be a perfect projectile, I guess, So, and I've been trying to justify this idea ever since. So
I can imagine if you're like pitching it to somebody, there's probably a little bit of confusion at first, but then like we're saying, how can you resist? That's a really fun way to create a character. Now, you had mentioned the first film, Lumpia, which came out in 2003. So that's 18 years between the two movies. So at what point and when did you decide, okay, it's time to make a sequel? Like how did that happen?
Well, so even then, we shot that way back in 1996, right? And so,
really? Oh wow,
yeah, it was a bunch of us Filipino kids in a neighborhood in Daly City who when we grew up, we always made movies during the summer. It was like our thing to do. And when I went to USC, I went to there for film school, and when I got back home during the summer, I just reunited our friends together and just said, hey, let's make a movie. And Lumpia was that reunion movie. We didn't think it would, get out there. It was just something we made for fun and to reunite. And then when we finally released it 7 years later, that movie's story itself, people were very taken back by I guess back then the comic book, but the fact that we were able to make this fun story with just our friends. And it made sense. So the sequel came about because we were actually celebrating the 10th year anniversary of that film. And so we decided, myself and my partner in crime, AJ Coloma, we decided why not, use this original movie that had some sort of a cult following in the community and make that our first crowdfunder. And lo and behold, we got crowdfunding on the last evening, actually. And then we were greenlit, and it gave us the motivation to make this movie, even though all of us are, part-time filmmakers because we all had full-time jobs. But in a way, the way that this movie was kickstarted back in 2013, and in a way, it took us 7 years to finish this sequel.
Wow.
But I think with an independent film like this and just how the scope of it, I think we would not have finished this film if not for the backers who were waiting for us. And I think that what motivated us to not just only finish the movie, but make a movie that was worthy of their support that they gave us. We wanted to make sure we made a movie that was fun and that's something that we'd be proud of.
Right. No, absolutely. That's a really great story. It's always amazing to me how long of a process it can be to just get one film made. You said, this goes back to 2013. The original goes back to, I think you said 1996. That's incredible. So now, from what you were just saying, the film received a lot of community support through the crowdfunding. Now, tell me about the process of creating and financing the movie the way you did, and what it means to you to receive that kind of support.
I mean, so the crowdfunder was really, it was really a way to figure out, see if there was still an appetite out there for Filipino American films. Like, did people out there want to do it? So crowdfunding was actually a good way for us to kind of test out the temperature out there, right? Because I mean, I don't think a studio would greenlight a movie about Lumpia, about a guy through Lumpia. So it was really on us to see if the people out there wanted a movie like that. And so.
Right.
So for it to be a kick fund, and then the move, and we were our first initial was 50,000, which really is not enough to really make a feature film, right?
Right.
So we used that as a jumping start to develop the script, and it motivated us to. It took us 2 years to come up with a draft that we would finally be happy with, and then each time we would always try to, because we were still fundraising. Each time we thought we were about to give up or something, there was always some sort of checkpoint that allowed us to move further. The first one was hooking up with Mark Munoz, former UFC fighter, to join us. And then, a year later, Danny Trejo came on board to join us. So at any point, I mean, we did this crowdfunding, and then to the point of even post-production, and then this year we crowdfunded a comic book, So even when the movie's done, there's still people who are excited about just this idea that, it feels like we're just really doing their work, their community work, So it's a weird sense of community.
Yeah. Yeah.
Involved in front of the scenes and behind the scenes.
Right. No, that's amazing. Now, you had mentioned Danny Trejo, and you had mentioned earlier inspiration taken from Mariachi. Now, the sequel to Mariachi was Desperado, who Danny Trejo is in that film. So
his career rejuvenated. His career rejuvenated with Desperado. Yeah.
Exactly. So now take that from, movies that inspired you to make this one, and then now having Danny Trejo in this movie. Like, how did that connection happen? Where did you bring him into the project?
I mean, that's exactly what I mentioned to Danny when we're about to wrap him. I told him straight up, like, you, El Mariachi, Robert Rodriguez, was inspiration for this original film, and him taking part in this sequel was like it coming full circle, And Danny Trejo being involved was in screenplay form was always kind of a dream. Like, it'd be cool if Danny played this part in the film, because I knew that the Mexican and Filipino the connection goes back to Cesar Chavez and Larry Itliong and just and so to have him and so you never know, because this industry especially is full of rejections and no, but you never know who's going to say yes.
Right.
And Danny Trejo's team happened to got the script, and their team said yes, Danny said yes, and it was full on. And so he was a pleasant surprise. And I mean, I'm surprised for everyone. I think anyone who sees a trailer and sees Danny Trejo involved, they're like, "What?" And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to. It was almost like it's possible. It's possible for this to happen.
Right. No, absolutely. That's really cool. Now, as far as other casting, you had mentioned Rachel, a high school student who's played by April Absinthe, and who I thought was just fantastic. Now, she has so much charisma, so much personality. So where did you find her, and what was the casting process like for the movie, not just for her, but overall as well?
Yeah, so the casting process was the casting audition is not really my favorite thing to do as a filmmaker. It's hard to see everyone. But we got April through the audition process, and you have to know that the actual part of the film was actually supposed to be a son. The role was supposed to be the son of Moon Moon, not really the daughter of Moon Moon. And so that came in kind of in the last two drafts when we finally said, you know what, it works better as a daughter. And finding April, she just embodied that character. She knew exactly the right way to play that, and in a way, it helped me develop the role better. Where I even rewrote the third act of the film, because we shot this in 2 years. So when we had to restart again the second year, the movie became different for the third act, and so April played a big part in that. And I'm not surprised that she's she just booked a role. She's just playing a role now, Blind Spotting, and I'm not surprised, because she's super talented, and she was very key in terms of us figuring out Rachel, the character. And in terms of the other casting, I mean, this was a grand experiment. I'm trying to combine my friends who are non-professional actors with professional actors and with Hollywood legends like Danny Trejo in the mix and a former UFC fighter. So, like, you're already getting all these ingredients, and you don't know how it's going to mesh and how it's going to work out.
Right.
But I think the fact that everyone knew we had such a family vibe on set, that I think people understood what we were up against. And again, it started out with a bunch of Filipino kids playing in this playground, and now we have professionals and Hollywood icons like Dan Trejo now joining the sandbox, and it just got bigger, So that's what I'm most proud of. I think the fact that we were able to rally and get the community not only to greenlight the film, but also to take part in it.
I think it's really appropriate that usually the best thing you can do when you take a bunch of different ingredients like that is just wrap it up and deep fry it. So there you go, right back to the lumpia.
I know. Only with a movie like about lumpia.
Exactly. Now, on that topic, one of the things I love about the movie is just how much Filipino culture you throw in, the music, the wardrobe, the languages, the way family members and friends interact, and of course the food, lumpia being the prime ingredient there. So why was it important for you to have all of that in there, just embedded into almost every single scene?
Well, I mean, it was already a decision made early on to make this unabashedly Filipino, specifically Filipino American, right? I didn't feel like, when I watch movies about other cultures, I don't need like a definition and the footnotes and all that stuff. If I did, I could easily Google it, or it makes me learn more about the culture. So with Filipino American culture, it was like it being about my upbringing, how it is to be growing up in something like Daly City, which is kind of based on Fogtown, where it was mostly people of color. I think it was very important to talk about something you rarely see in films, and to do it in such a, tongue-in-cheek, kind of a wacky comic book tone. I think as filmmakers, I think we put pressure on ourselves because we feel we need to make that Sundance film, that award-winning kind of drama and stuff. And I feel, my favorite movies growing up are really like wacky films like Revenge of the Nerds and Meatballs and Animal House. I mean, and I think Lumpia is really a cool way for me to, wrap my comic book nerdiness plus my love for retro 80s score and all that, plus with my culture. I think that was one of the things that you had to be proud of, and I hope when people see it, they not only have fun with it, but they get to learn something other than Filipinos being all about lumpia, that we're more than just our food, right?
Right, absolutely. And I love how you inform the audience right away what type of movie this is, with the comic influence, with the comic book influence, with some of the graphics, and how you introduce each of the characters by splashing their name in a comic book style. So it's pretty clear that you have a love for comic books and superheroes. So what and who are your biggest influences from that world that led to creating the character of Lumpia Man?
I mean, I'm such a big Marvel fan. I mean, I hate to put Marvel versus DC, but Marvel, I mean, Spider-Man obviously was a big influence because it was always about the human qualities of him being an awkward teenager who got bullied and couldn't get the girl, and so I think what I got out of the comic book world was, especially with writing Lumpia, was always putting some of those human elements in there. I mean, if you strip away all the Lumpia and the comic book stuff, it's really about a daughter who's really trying to feel worthy of being, being worthy of his family, because she's essentially, without spoiling it, a mistake, whatever. And so there's a lot of like heady topics, and there's bullying that we kind of bring back, and the kind of the classism issues, but to kind of do it in that kind of fashion through this fantastical superhero world was always kind of like the gimmick for me, what I love doing and sprinkling with the comic book, and all those comic books with Marvel, and all those just my love for the visualness of like how, I mean, Richard Donner, of course, I mean, who did with Superman the movie, I mean, all those original saying it's okay to put superheroes on screen. So I felt like why it felt as it's weird when you pitch this project to someone what's about it, someone throwing lumpia, right? I felt very safe that it was okay for me to cinematically, realize this wacky character, because I've seen people do it in Hollywood cinema, right? With other ideas, and now superheroes are very accepted. So I like to think that even with the original Lumpia movie, this existed before comic book movies really became such a big trend, you know. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the reason why. Comic books have always been an escape for me, but it's always now been, I used that platform and that genre really to kind of talk about the themes and story issues that I feel strongly about.
No, absolutely. Thank you for going into that. Now, one of the things that we touched on really briefly was, there was a time period between the two movies and then all of the different types of influences that went into this movie. One of the things was the music. Now, during the time between the two movies, is you worked with Black Eyed Peas on a few of their music videos. So tell me about that experience and what was the biggest thing that you learned during that time of making music videos that you could then bring forward to making another feature film?
That music and sound design soundtrack is a very powerful tool in filmmaking. I think that just strengthened my my use of them in my films. I in a way I use them really to set the tone for a lot of these things, and it helped me actually talk, be able to communicate more with our music composers. We had two here, Michael Kobayashi and Jonathan Wandog, but I use music a lot. Because my music videos, I never really saw them as music videos. We did like 2 decades worth of them, and so to be able to I treated them more as short films versus music videos. I know they're meant to sell songs and commercials, but I use them as a way to kind of develop my skills as a filmmaker. And so with Lumpia, I mean, song is everywhere, and even the kind of songs that I picked up, would be like. So the score would be very geeky in terms of very retro kind of 80s song. It has the synthesizers in it, right? But I think even as a nod Easter egg for those who don't know, like even within the Filipino American culture, we in the 90s we loved freestyle music, and that was a big thing.
I was gonna mention that. As soon as I heard the freestyle song in there, I was like, "Yep."
Again, another connection with the Latino and the Filipino, like Jocelyn Enriquez and all that. I mean, to have her on board on and Buffy as well. I mean, that for me was a nod. So people hear that, oh, I get it. I to put that on the action scene was always a dream of mine, to put a freestyle song in a key action scene. And and then a lot of my artists that I've worked with, they contributed songs to this. Apple the App, who's part of the Black Eyed Peas, has one song in there. So it worked together. I mean, that's why this project was a mishmash of just people getting together who I worked with in the past.
Oh, no, that's awesome. And like I said, I immediately noticed that freestyle song kick in. I did hear Black Eyed Peas in there. I also heard Ruby Ibarra in there, who's a fantastic Filipina rap artist. So yeah, just an outstanding job on getting all of those musical influences in there. Thank you for touching on that. Now, what do you want people to take away from watching your movie? Like, what should they be feeling and talking about as the credits begin to roll and they start thinking about the movie after the fact?
Well, if they're not hungry by the time the credits roll, then I didn't do my job properly. Exactly. If they're not crediting for Lumpia, then yeah. But seriously, yeah, I think it's to have fun. I think the movie is a roller coaster. It's paced very quick, and I think hopefully by the end of it, I hope what people get of it is like they've learned that just being Filipino American is just the same as any. Hopefully, there's something they kind of latched into. But in the end, it's just really about having fun and being entertained and transporting you into this world that is like Fogtown is real. I mean, Metropolis and could be like New York or Chicago, but Fogtown is really based on the real city. Any town that has a huge minority population, especially in government, right? So.
No, absolutely. Now, is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you'd like to add into the conversation?
Look, if people love the film and stuff, I mentioned this, like that our backers actually helped us crowdfund. We have a whole comic book series now. We actually just funded our third issue this week. Oh, wow. And so these are connected to the movie. So if you liked this film and want to know more about it, I mean, yes, check out the original Lumpia movie, but we definitely have comic books that is created by actually the people who made the movie. We had our producer who drew the book, and we also had an assistant stunt coordinator who I didn't even know drew. Like, he's an artist, so that's another extra component. And I think it's really cool. Like this movie was literally willed to existence by our backers and our supporters. So I am very appreciative of the love that went into this project.
Nice. So what's the website where people can find that information?
Lumpiamovie.com. And then on all the social medias is at Lumpia Movie on IG, Facebook, and Twitter.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'll add some links into the post for this conversation as well. So Patricio, thank you for speaking with me during the film festival. Please enjoy the rest of your time and good luck with the film.
You too, Mark. And love that Lumpia.
All right, thank you so much. This is Mark Morin and special guest Patricio Ginelsa talking about Lumpia with a Vengeance, an official selection of the 2021 Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival. For those watching on YouTube, please like the video, subscribe to the page, leave a comment, and share on social media. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, share, and you can also leave a review on iTunes. Any way you can support the podcast is very much appreciated. You can find every podcast episode and all of my movie reviews, including my review of Lumpia with a Vengeance, on TwoOhSix.com. This is the TwoOhSix Podcast. Thank you for your time. Be safe and take care.